A rash of injuries should be decimating the Twins right now. So naturally, they're marching to a postseason berth.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB to win $50 instantly when you pay $5. You don't even need to win to get that bonus. Hey, follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, or whatever it's called now. Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And if you're listening to this show every day, or if you're listening to Locked On A's, which I'm also hosting, make sure to leave that hashtag #EverydaySully. Okay, let's do a little bit of business here. Yesterday, I did a trivia question in honor of the great Bill Mazeroski, the Hall of Famer whose birthday is the 5th of September. And I pointed out that while his home run is one of the most memorable and dramatic in the history of baseball, it may not have even have been the most dramatic home run of that game, because someone hit a 3-run go-ahead home run in the bottom of the 8th to give the Pirates the lead to help set up what became the walk-off victory. Who was that player who was this close to being one of the great immortals in baseball history? The answer from one of my listeners called user-QT8DL1RR2S, which, by the way, is my mother's maiden name. Got to correct, it was Hal Smith. Hal Smith didn't even start that game. He's a backup catcher who came up and wound up crushing that home run, which at the time sure made it look like was going to be the great heroic moment of that series. And then the Yankees tied the game at the top, and then the Mazeroski hit the home run. And everyone remembers Mazeroski. But Hal Smith deserves a salute. He died a few years ago. And I actually made a mistake in the in memoriam video. I don't like to admit mistakes in memoriam video, but I showed the clip of the home run when I was honoring him, which he did indeed hit. And then I posted his picture. And I looked up Hal Smith, Pittsburgh Pirates, 1960s, and I found him. It turns out I picked another Hal Smith. The Hal Smith, I showed the home run. That's the correct Hal Smith. But apparently there were 2 Hal Smiths who played for the Pirates in the 1960s. There you go. Sometimes stuff like that happens. There were 2 Steve Ontiveroses at one point playing. There were 2 Dave Stapletons playing. I guess Hal Smith is more common name than that, but I felt silly. And to this day, I feel bad. All right. A tight, exciting game was played. I'm recording this on Thursday afternoon. It is 103 degrees Celsius here at the Locked On MLB studios in Pasadena, California, overlooking the historic Rose Bowl. And it's hot. It's hot here. 3,000 miles away, the Minnesota Twins played in front of not a packed house in Tampa Bay. And the Rays are, you know what? The Rays are fading. Let's call it the way it is. The Rays, who had a wonderful regular season last year and have been on kind of on the periphery, they are, where are they out in the wild card right now? They are 6.5 games out. It's not going to happen this year. And they saw that. That's why they sold at the deadline, to try to get some younger players over here. Now, on paper, teams like the Red Sox and the Mariners and the Tigers should be making a big old run, a big honking old run at one of the spots in the wild card. And the team that they should be, at least in theory, making the big old run towards is the Minnesota Twins. Now, the Minnesota Twins have had injuries to the Joe Ryans of the world, Byron Buxton is out, and we're not sure when that kid's coming back. His rehab had a little bit of a setback. Carlos Correa hasn't played since, I think, July. And he was playing kind of well, but then all of a sudden he's out. And, they wound up, they've not been great in the last bunch of years. They've dropped 6 of their last 10. And yet, their magic number for clinching a playoff spot has been reduced to 17. And in today's game in Tampa Bay, obviously they don't have the Buxtons of the world. Obviously they don't have the Correas of the world. So they got to lean on the Edouard Julien of the world. They got to rely on Matt Wallner getting a solo home run, and Lopez. And Lopez, who, remember, was the spoils of the Arise trade a few years ago, once again is showing that he can pitch. As this wasn't necessarily ace material today, but he pitched in the 7th. He struck out 9, 6 2/3 innings. Jax pitched well, Duran pitched well, and next thing you know, the Twins won the game and are creeping towards a spot in the postseason. And it's strange because, this looks like a team that should be falling apart. And, they wound up splitting a 4-game series with Tampa. They wound up winning the series against Toronto, but getting swept by Atlanta, losing the series to St. Louis, losing the series to San Diego. But the thing is that the other teams behind them have not been doing their job and collapsing. Well, talk about collapsing. The Twins won their game today against Tampa Bay, and now they're lining up for a weekend series against Kansas City. Now, it may not be the sexiest matchup, Kansas City versus Minnesota, but this has a huge impact on the American League wild card as it is. If one of those two teams can really beat up the other, they can, first of all, one could all but secure a postseason spot. And the other could put the other team in danger if Seattle, Boston, or Detroit can dust themselves off and make themselves, good. By the way, this is another reason why, if you're a Toronto fan, you should be absolutely incensed. The fact that if you're 500 at this point, you still have an outside chance. But here's where things could get interesting for Minnesota. Minnesota has the 3-game series at Kansas City. Then they'll be facing the Angels at home. The Angels stink. They'll be facing Cincinnati at home. Cincinnati's not very good. If they can win this series against Kansas City, the Twins, if they play well, can do. They could secure one of the playoff spots pretty early and hopefully get either Correa or Buxton back. Now, if they don't get Buxton, they're going to probably have Kepler's injured as well. I mean, like they're being decimated by injuries. They have a prospect named Deshaun Piercy who may come up, and who knows, he may be one of those players who sparks the team and does quite well. Thank you very much. I don't know the answer, and neither do you. But this is what makes it very interesting for me. It makes it very interesting for me because the American League does not have that one, no doubt about it, leader. The Yankees, we've seen recently, Judge has slowed down. Their bullpen is an absolute mess, and they keep losing to teams they have no business losing to. We've seen that Houston, while probably the best team in terms of playoff experience and some talent, they are showing that their bats can die, and they've been in a rough stretch of it. They were shut out by a not very good Cincinnati Reds team for their 3rd straight loss, blowing a terrific Hunter Brown start. Baltimore lost to the Chicago White Sox the other day and have basically done everything in their power to hand the division back to the Yankees, who have not accepted it. And we've seen Cleveland be up and down. Minnesota right now with Lopez, with Olbur, with Woods Richardson, I would take those three over some of the questionable starters the Yankees have. As it starts right now, a wild card series would be between New York and Minnesota. And while New York has had Minnesota's number over the last couple of, bunch of times they play in the postseason, this is a different time. The Twins got off the schneid last year and got the proverbial monkey off their back, and are no longer the team that can't win a single postseason game. That's no longer the case. They made it to the division series last year. And I'm not saying that Duran is a great closer, but I like Jax out of the bullpen. I like Cole Sands out of the bullpen. I like what some of the other pitchers have been doing out of their, for some of the depth there. And even though they have injuries to Kepler and Margot and to Correa right now, you could see Julian still has some power. Santana still has some pop. And you roll your dice with the Jeffers, with the Royce Lewises, and the Matt Wallners of the world. And one of them could come up, and all you got to do, if they're playing New York, split the first two games, you've got them on the ropes. It's a best-of-3 series. This is, if there's any year a team like Minnesota could find themselves pennant-bound the way Arizona did last year, it's this year. There is no top-heavy team in the American League. And look me in the eye and say you would rather have the Yankees as they're playing right now rather than this beat-up Minnesota Twins team. As it stands, first things first, they got to win this series against Kansas City. And if that's the case, you give Rocco Baldelli and company all the hope in the world. I like Lopez in game one of a series. Yes, even against Garrett Cole, because this isn't the Garrett Cole of last year. And who knows, it might be Baltimore because, there's really only half a game separating the two. So I don't know, neither do you, but it may not be first and foremost on your watching list, Kansas City versus Minnesota, but it could have some big impact later on. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Say that 3 times fast. PrizePicks is the best way to get on action on sports in most states, including Texas, Georgia, and right here in California. And PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You could double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. For your second listen, why not listen to more of me? I'm also the host of Locked On A's. And you know what? We're having a lot of fun this month. It's the final month of the Oakland A's. I'm going to be going to the last ever game at the Oakland Coliseum, and we're going to be having some interesting fans who are going to be guests as the A's are being ripped from the East Bay. So follow us on Locked On A's, wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, as promised, Sam Olbur from Locked On Cubs is here. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. I alluded yesterday that when I talked about no-hitters being interrupted by relief pitching, fortunately, the Chapman signing took over the headline for yesterday, but I alluded that 2 pitchers were throwing no-hitters yesterday, and both times the manager said, well, that's enough of that. I don't understand. The Gallen one, maybe, because he was throwing a lot of pitches, and the Diamondbacks are trying to get that spot. It's more important for them to have Gallen healthy in October, I guess. I mean, I'm a big believer in, like, let the guy at least come out in the 7th. But the one in Wrigley last night completely perplexed me. Imanaga wasn't throwing. He wasn't on his 200th pitch here. This wasn't Dusty with Kerry Wood out there. It wasn't a close game, as my mom would say. The score was a lot to not enough, and I don't mean to insult you, but the Cubs are peripheral contenders at best at this point.
At best.
I mean, at best. I mean, the Cubs have played very well recently, but it may be they still have to leapfrog both the Mets and Atlanta to get a shot at it, and I don't see it happening. So, to quote Voltaire, why the hell did that happen?
Well, I'm glad to hear you approach it like that, because I got a lot of grief on Twitter for insinuating. See, here's my thing. You're a baseball historian, so you know the game in and out. You came on my own show and beat me in my own Cubs trivia. Only person to do that. Mm-hmm. But I think, Sully, the question isn't whether that was the right or wrong move. It's more, why are we here? Why has it become commonplace for a guy with 95 pitches? Because, we're at that point where, yes, Shota Imanaga has never thrown, this many innings in Japan, and he's had some shoulder stuff, and they want to keep him healthy. That's fine. If that's what council wants to do and they want to be prevalent with that. But how come then we saw, since I'm representing the Cubs here, we saw Fergie Jenkins throw 300 plus innings, 5, 6, 7 times, no problem. And, some of these guys could do it. And yet the injuries are still the same. The guys are getting hurt more than ever.
More so.
Yeah. So it just, that's where my frustration came, was not, should they have let him out? Should have not. Is okay. If that's commonplace now, then why are guys still getting hurt? And I think that's a real nuanced conversation. But yeah, to answer your question, how did that happen? Believe it or not, there wasn't a lot of arm raising. I think a lot of people expected it to happen. He's, they're going to be really careful with him. They want to watch his innings, all the stuff that you hear, all the kind of cliche stuff. That's the reason why. And I don't necessarily think that that's the wrong decision. I just think that as a baseball community, we always are talking about ways to make the game better. We got a pitch clock now and shorter games. You can't tell me not having a guy finish a no-hitter is good for baseball. You can't tell me that. And so that's just to finish it. That's the problem, is why are we here versus that was probably the right decision for 2024, but why?
Well, and we saw, like, Ronel Blanco was throwing a no-hitter not too long ago, and he was lifted. And they're like, and this wasn't like his first. He'd thrown a no-hitter earlier this year.
Right.
I mean, first of all, I'm going to see the glasses half full for a second. I feel great. Two people I feel really great for are Nate Pearson and Porter Hodge, because they could bounce their grandchildren on their knee at one point and say, open up the Cub record book, and you can see me listed as partially throwing a no-hitter for the Chicago Cubs. And so good for them. Porter, I mean, look, they're major leaguers. Anyone who makes it to the major leagues is an extraordinary talent.
Sure.
But this could have been a really great moment for the Cubs, especially as they're trying to build goodwill towards 2025. This is a very disappointing season for the Cubs.
Totally.
This was like last year, the Cardinals were the consensus pick to win the Central, and they finished in dead last, and Milwaukee won the division. This year, Milwaukee lost their ace. They lost their manager. I forget who got their manager. Oh, yeah, the Cubs. And it looked like for a while, the Cubs were going to be the only team going for it, especially after Milwaukee traded away their ace. And it looked like, okay, this is the Cubs division to lose. And they said, hold my beer, Brewers. And so to have a great moment, a fun moment, to get Cub fans jazzed up for 2025, to say, hey, look, they got off to a rotten start, but they're going to finish with a winning season probably. They're going to fall short of the Mets and the Braves, unless those teams absolutely collapse. I don't think both of them are going to collapse. But you have the no-hitter. You want to have a winning year. You feel good moving into next year, and maybe you make a run at Soto or something like that. God forbid.
Yeah.
But this is sort of like, yes, I'm happy for Porter Hodge, and I'm sure it was fun when you were there. But it felt like a lost opportunity to get Cub fans jazzed up for 2025.
Yeah, I mean, you said everything beautifully. Beautifully, it's like you should be on the show. And you want to know? I guess the only thing I would add, I'll add two things. Number one, Imanaga, the perfect guy to do it too.
Yeah. Yes.
He's so likable. He's so fun, and he's been, I mean, one of the few guys on the Cubs this year that has just by far exceeded expectations. I mean, he's been wonderful. He's had 3 blow-up starts. Outside of that, he's been solid every single time. And the last thing I'll add is not only were they close for the no-hitter, but Pete Crow Armstrong hit a ball that was about a half an inch foul that probably would have been a triple that would have been the cycle. So they could have had a cycle and a no-hitter in the same game. So yeah, I don't have much. I echo everything you said. I wish the game was in a little bit of a different place. I like, my whole thing is if guys were way more healthy now, I would have no problem with preserving their arms and saying, hey, this is the right thing for their future. But guys,
they're not.
Guys are still getting hurt more than ever, and we're getting robbed of really special moments. I mean, I know I saw it. I mean, I'll ask you because you probably know the answer. The last 9 inning by one pitcher no hitter thrown at Wrigley Field was a long time ago. I don't know if you know one.
Was it Ken Holtzman?
No, one after.
Oh, Milt Pappas?
Correct.
Okay.
And I think that was 72, I think.
Yeah, okay, because that's right. Holtzman did it in the year before he was acquired by the Reds, and Milt Pappas did the next year. Okay.
Yep.
Hey. Look at that. I didn't.
No, I know. And he actually almost had a perfect game that game. And so,
but then error was made in the 9th inning.
It was a bad umpire.
It was a bad call by umpire. There was something weird like that.
Yeah. And it like ruined his. He's still like never forgot about it. And
he's no longer with us. So and it says on his grave it should have been a perfect game.
But I agree. I agree with what you're saying.
The 2 pitching trends happened in the same game that I don't like. Not letting the pitcher come out to complete the no hitter, and the position player pitching.
Yep.
And if it was once in a while, like when Mark Grace pitched for the Diamondbacks that time, it could be fun once in a while, but it's now become part of strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned this on the podcast. I don't like the you have to throw 6 inning proposal. My proposal is this: you get 4 pitchers for 9 innings. You get 4 pitchers.
I like it.
I hate the parade of relievers each throwing 1 inning. It takes away the idea of the starting pitching matchup. However, if your pitcher gets bombed, like Domingo Germán got bombed, there's no reason why the Pirates should have had to let him pitch another inning just for some arcane rule. And that could actually cause even more injuries.
Sure.
But to say, all right, you shift Domingo Germán out in the first, you got 3 more pitchers. They got to last the rest of the game. You got to figure that out. That's my rule. But I've talked about this on my show, and this is a much deep, maybe you and I can in the off season when we got to burn some shows, we can have this conversation. I believe it's economic. I believe we're not having aces and building up our aces the way we used to, because it's the most expensive commodity is the ace pitcher. So let's try to create pitching staffs that don't need an ace pitcher. It's kind of like the most expensive commodity in films is the movie star. So let's create movies that don't need a movie star. It's a similar thing. When was the last time a true ace has been developed? Really? If you take a look, a real 250 inning pitcher.
Verlander,
and I also Verlander.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, maybe DeGrom, but he's injured all the time.
Right.
And I think a big part of it comes down to also is the idea of drafting a pitcher who doesn't throw 100 miles an hour is scary. To have someone like a Greg Maddux who thinks and
Kyle
outsmarts.
Hendricks.
Kyle Hendricks, who thinks, those type of pitchers who, the Musinas of the world, who have great stuff, but really outsmart the batters. That's tough to scout. And so, that guy, he throw fast, good. And you're doing stuff that the arm's not designed to do. But I've said this before, and I've said it again, and I'll say it 2 more times if anyone asks. We need to develop knuckleballers. Knuckleballers. They screw up people's timing. Knuckleballers pitch forever. I mean, Phil Niekro died a couple of years ago and still logged 130 innings last year. Wakefield pitched forever. Charlie Huff pitched forever. Wilbur Wood pitched forever. Tom Candiotti pitched forever. Have guys like that who throw 200 some odd innings and get people whiffing like swinging at Bugs Bunny's slow pitch. 1, 2, 3, 6, I mean, like, I want more knucklers. That's what we got to do. And the team that develops the knuckleballers will have the 4-man rotation with each man going 200 some odd innings a game.
I think there's some truth to the economic stuff for sure. And then I think the one thing I would add would be, Rick Sutcliffe was doing a game for the Cubs probably like a month ago, and he was telling some story. I'm not going to get into it. We don't have the time for it, but basically the genesis of the story was that he got some flack for throwing like a 2-0 or 2-1 changeup to somebody or an off-speed pitch. And I think in today's age, I see like once a week 3-0 sliders, whereas back then, there were fastball counts. Guys would throw fastball. There's so much strain on the arm and fatigue and all those things when you're throwing 2-0 breakers, 1-1 breakers, cutters. I think that might be a part of it too. Where it's like, for example, when Fergie Jenkins was throwing 300 plus innings, if he falls behind 2-0, you're getting a fastball. Just is what it is.
Yep.
So that could be a part of it too. But yeah, it's a really nuanced conversation. It was a bittersweet night for the Cubs because I think Monday night in the game that they blew late probably was really the nail in the coffin in their season. And then they got beat by Skeens Tuesday, and then they capped it off with this great win Wednesday with the combined no-hitter, which was cool, but it doesn't at all feel the same as it would have been if 27 outs were gotten by Shota Imanaga.
All right. Well, hey, Sam Olbur, where can people listen to your great show?
Anywhere. YouTube, Locked On Cubs, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pod, we're on, we're rolling, and we got the Yankees this weekend and then the Dodgers, so we get some high-profile matchups.
All right, man. We'll check them out at Locked On Cubs. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Diamondbacks. They lost today, but, man, they are making some of the other wild card contenders absolutely squirm. All right, the barbecue season used to mean summertime barbecues, but now it means tailgating for the football games. Stock up on all your grilling favorites and earn cash back with every purchase when you use Ibotta. So you don't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. You could get both. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries, beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 a year. That can cover the shopping trip, a flight you've been eyeing, or even a fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much, but with Ibotta, you earn cash back. You can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, unload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's time you join more than 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Go to the App Store and Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, and start earning cash back and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. Hey, this is a reminder that Locked On has created the first ever national sports 24/7 news channel. It's called Locked On Sports Today. It is available on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and on the Amazon Fire TV, free Fire TV channel app. Check us out. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My cousin Dave, who's a rabid Mets fan, texted me and said, do the Diamondbacks ever lose? Because the Mets have been knocking on the door of a playoff spot, but they need a hand from some of the other teams that are ahead of them in the wild card hunt, specifically the Diamondbacks, the Padres, and the Atlanta Braves. Well, my cousin Dave should be happy today. Yes, the Diamondbacks finally lost a game. The Giants salvaged the final game of their series, and Patrick Bailey walked it off in the bottom of the ninth with a walk-off. He got a 2-run single earlier, then walked it off with a bottom of the ninth ground rule double that gave the win to San Francisco. If you are a Mets fan and you want good news, well, then guess what? Your team didn't play, but you got nothing but good news. Now I'm going to, I'll recap it with someone by telling you who owned baseball for September 5th, 2024. Bryson Stott singled and homered. Phillies beating Miami 5-2. Austin Gomber threw 8 solid innings, allowed 1 run, no walks. The Rockies topped Atlanta 3-1. So with the Rockies winning that game, the idle Mets are now in a tie for the final wild card spot. With just about 20 some odd games to go, the Mets, while they slumbered, Austin Gomber gave him a big hand, beat the Rocks, beat Atlanta. So now Atlanta and Mets are in a flat-footed tie. More good news if you're a Met fan. Parker Meadows hit a 2-out 9th inning grand slam that turned a 3-0 Padre lead into a 4-3 Detroit victory. Wild 9th inning there. And the Tigers woke up, and they're still on the periphery. I don't think they're going to do much, but hey, at least they're gunning for a winning record. Also, Cody Bradford pitched 6 strong innings for the Rangers, who topped the Angels. Half wobs. Martin Perez pitched shutout ball into the 7th. He allowed 5 hits, but the Padres bullpen lost that game. Hunter Brown of the Astros, he could be a big factor when the Astros make the postseason. He threw 6 shutout innings, but the Reds blanked the Astros 1-0. Xander Bogaerts got 3 hits for the Padres in that game where they lost to the Tigers, and Brent Rooker homered twice, but the A's lost to Seattle 6-4. So there you go. Cody Bradford, Austin Gomber, Parker Meadows, Bryson Stott got full wobs, half wobs to Hunter Brown, Xander Bogaerts, Martin Perez, and Brent Rooker, which brings us to the trivia question. Giancarlo Stanton is the only player in Marlins history to hit 200 home runs as a Marlin. He's the all-time home run leader for the Marlins. Here's a trivia question. Who's number 2? Which Marlins slugger who did not hit 200 home runs in a Marlins uniform has the second highest number of home runs for any player in Marlins history? Just the home runs as a Marlin. So it's to get that Miguel Cabrera out of your head right now. Who is the second highest total of home runs in Marlins history? So follow us on Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. It's Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Tomorrow's show, we are going to be talking about Cal Ripken Day and remembering that great moment. But for right now, I could say, what was I talking about? Talk about the Twins. Talk about Sam Olbur. Talk about a really hot night. And talk about Met fans who should be happy. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.